the feelings that we all had, the people that survived that, there was only 8 of us that actually walked back into the fire support base that next morning. And we were all in shock. And when we got back, when we could see the fire support base where the wire was and so forth, we noticed that the corner where our bunkers were, the second platoon bunkers, we had 3 of them on the perimeter that we were responsible for. They weren't there, and we thought we were disoriented. We thought maybe we were coming in on a different corner or something. And when we got in there, we said, there was a sergeant there, and we said, well, where's the second platoon bunkers? And he said, well, they were right here. What do you mean they were right here? He said, well, they're all gone. They're blown up. He said the NVA came in and satchel charged all of them. And I said, well, where's our guys? And he said, he pointed over there. He says, underneath all those ponchos over there. And we couldn't believe it. I personally said, there's no way. I verbally said that. I said, there's no way that's our guys. And he says, well, I'm sorry, but he goes, that's it. And so I, we're standing there and I said, I don't believe it. So I went over and I knelt down to the poncho on the far left and I pulled it, and it was Sugar Bear Taylor, one of our guys. And I looked at him, and he just had this dead look, and he was a black guy, and he was kind of gray. His skin was gray color. And I turned to the guys and I said, oh my God, it's Sugar Bear. And the guys go, really? Everybody's in disbelief. So I went to the next one and the next one. Because we couldn't believe it. And it was all of our guys. How do you describe how it feels when you see all your buddies laying there dead? And some of them were pretty tore up from the satchel charges. So a lieutenant comes over and he goes, okay, guys, we got to clean out those bunkers and rebuild them. We're staying here tonight. And everybody goes, oh, no, we're not. We'll take off, And so I remember Sergeant Marquez, who was an old lifer. He was our platoon sergeant, but he was an old Puerto Rican guy, that professional soldier. He comes over and he goes, what in the goddamn hell you think you do, you son of a beach? He goes, we're staying. You've got to clean those out or we're all going to be dead. And so we kind of sobered up a little bit and we realized, well, where would we go?
Mm.
The 8 of us, where would we go? If we were to take off, there was no place for us to go that we wouldn't be probably walking into problems. On one of the bunkers, as they were cleaning it out, John Cook reached down and he lifted up a boot and it still had the foot in it. And now everybody's so numb, he just goes, isn't this the shits? And he just threw the boot out. I mean, that nobody even said, oh my God, or that's terrible. It was just like, this is it. This is the way it is. The next morning, they sent a D8 Caterpillar dozer in, and they dug a big pit right out in front of where our bunkers were, and they had us go out and drag all the dead bodies in. I think there was 148 or 100 some dead NVA, and we just dumped them in this pit. And then some engineers coming through some bags of lime in there, and then they covered them up. And so we even were sick about that. I mean, this is all these guys are dead. Yes, they're the enemy, but they're soldiers. I mean, it's not like we were going, oh, goody, good, good. Look at all the dead guys. I mean, uh, it's such a horrible thing.
So I wanted to, there's a section of your memoir that I wanted to read to you, and then sort of share my thought, and then listen, and then I'm interested in your response.
Okay.
And so you're describing yourself. You say that, when the fight is over after the first fight at Diamond, um, and you've got all these. Of course, you have the dead American soldiers, and you've described that, and you go and look at some of those, but then you also have the dead enemy. And here's what you write. And so I'll read what you write and then share my thought. And then I'm interested in hearing what your thought is. So you say, I approached one of the dead bodies. I saw the back of his head was missing. One of his eyes was lying out on his cheek. For reasons unknown to me, I squatted next to the body and yelled, Hey, Popeye, if you ever go to sleep on guard again, I'll kill you. I then stood up and kicked the guy's head, causing one of his teeth to fall out on the ground. I picked the tooth up and put it in my pocket. And then you go on to say that you mailed that home. And so, what I think when I read that passage is, here's how old were you at this time?
19.
So here's a 19-year-old kid, and I do this thought exercise, and I say, so let me walk up to John Quintrell when he's 17, and I'm going to ask him, hey, how would you like to go to another country? And you're going to get into a big fight, and then at the end of the fight, one of the dead guys is going to, have an eye hanging out, and then you're going to kick him in the head, and one of his teeth is going to fall out, and then you're going to put his tooth in your pocket. I'm pretty sure that 17-year-old John Quintrell is going to say, I'm not really interested in doing anything like that. I mean,
I would probably say I would never do anything like that.
yeah. And so the question then is, what does war do? What does combat do? What does combat in the specific context of South Vietnam, what does that do to a young man so that in that moment, that kind of thing seems like the thing to do?
I think it's a moment of insanity. I don't think I was I don't think I was in my right mind actually. I mean I just did that compulsively. There was nothing planned. And when I saw the guy and I saw his eye hanging out, I don't even know why I thought of Popeye. That's kind of a,
Oh, Popeye.
Popeye. And and of course the deal about going to sleep on guard, that was always the big deal. For us, you can't go to sleep on guard, otherwise you're going to get your throat cut, basically. And so all of this together, and this was after, of course, we'd seen all the guys dead, and we were out dragging bodies over to the pit. And you know what was even more sad than that is one of my new guys was standing next to me, and when he saw me do that, he looked at me and he goes, "That was awesome." Now here's a young guy that had only been out in the field, what, a week or two, and he looks at me, who an old guy that was experienced, do this, and he goes, "Oh, that's awesome." Of course, I've had to live with that kind of stuff all my life, and part of the PTSD issue is trying to deal with how do you answer the question that you just asked me? What causes a 19-year-old kid to do things? You know, Doc had been sending ears home to his mother in the mail, and his mother, and this is going to sound weird, but if you cut a guy's ear off, it doesn't look like an ear. If you just look at it, it almost looks like you've taken a pear and sliced it. It looks like a piece of sliced pear. And by the time you put it in a box and send it home, can you imagine what it looked like and what it smelled like when his mother opened the box? So she's concerned and calls the Red Cross. And so the Red Cross contacts the company commander with her concerns. The company commander, I'll never forget this as long as I live. We were at Jackson Fire Support Base, and when they brought supplies out, the supply sergeant said, "Where's Doc Turner?" And so they got Doc and took him back into Cu Chi. He had to go and stand before the company commander. And Doc relayed this story to us when he came back. he said the CO locked his heels basically and started shaking this piece of paper at him and saying, "Doc, what in the hell are you doing?" And Doc goes, "I don't know." I mean, he hadn't told him what it was about. And he goes, "Your mother went to the Red Cross and said you were sending ears home to her, and she went to the Red Cross, and he goes, "Doc, what the hell are you doing?" And Doc goes, "I don't know." And he goes, "Do you have any idea how much paperwork this causes me, Doc? Now get the hell out of here and knock it off." Period. No discipline, no Article 15, no condemnation. Just, do you know how much paperwork this causes? Yeah, is that the definition of insanity or what? A major in Kuchi, and so he flew out in a helicopter because he wanted to view the bodies. And when he got off of the helicopter, he was in starched fatigues with spit shine boots. Right? He'd never seen a day out in the field. And he had with him his photographer. And so Lieutenant O'Brien had us line these bodies up, so that he could see them. So they're taking pictures, and then this major kneels down next to the bodies, and he's having the photographer get different angles, and then he tells the lieutenant, "Get me an M16." So they get an M16. Now he's posing himself with the M16 and the dead bodies. Well, everybody knew what the hell that was all about. He was going to send those pictures home and probably tell, whoever, "Look what I did," or, "This was after I'd killed all these people single-handedly," right? And in my mind, I said to myself, I hope those people on the other end see that he's got starch fatigues and spit shine boots on.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that's when he got in front of us and he said, "Hey, I want to say a few words." Like he was going to congratulate us. And before he ever got a chance to say anything, Doc walked straight away to him and saluted him and said, "Sir, on behalf of the 2nd Platoon, I'd like to give you this award." He holds his hand out. The major puts his hand out. Doc drops the ears in his hand. And I swear to God, all of us thought we were all going to jail. I mean, we were all shocked. Like, we couldn't believe Doc did that. And instead of the major saying anything, he put him in his pocket and turned around and got back on the helicopter without saying a word to anybody. And then we all looked at each other and said, "That son of a bitch probably took those ears back, put them on a leather thong, and hung them up in his hooch." That's the insanity of the Vietnam War, my friend.
What did you all think about Doc? Because of course you're relying on Doc.
What, listen,
What did you
listen.
think about that?
Doc Turner came to us. Uh, Doc was with the 5th Mech. He had seen so much death and dismemberment. He was with a mechanized unit, and they got overrun several different times. Doc, on a couple of occasions, was only survived with 4 or 5 of his guys. And on this one battle, he lost it. And after he put all the dead and wounded on the helicopter, there was only like a half a dozen guys left. And Doc said, "I'm getting out of here." And he got on the helicopter. And the crew chief said, "Doc, you can't. It's only dead and wounded." And Doc took his M16 and shot himself in the foot. And the crew chief said, "Get on." Doc had to go to Graves and Registration and work. And they assigned him putting toe tags on dead GIs. Now, how ironic is that? I mean, here he comes from. What caused him to flip? Dead guy, right? Dead and wounded. Now he's putting toe tags on dead guys. And so, but he wasn't in jail,
Wasn't
and he had a chance of not going to Leavenworth. And then one day, of course, a guy come in and said, "Is there any medics available here?" And they said, "Well, Doc Turner's in the back." And they said, "Doc, this is the deal. We're going to wipe your record completely clean. It's as though nothing ever happened. We're not even going to make you serve lost time." And he said, "But we need a medic, and we're going to send you to the Wolfhounds." And Doc says, sure, I'll go. And see, Doc thought the Wolfhounds was a scout dog outfit.
Oh, great. He
He'd
doesn't know
never
what's
heard of the
coming.
Wolfhound. He'd never heard of the Wolfhounds before.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
from the frying pan, Doc jumped right into the fire. So do you see what we got? Doc was broken. However, having said that, Doc was one of the best medics we ever had.
wow.
Unbelievable. I mean, when we'd be out there, if somebody yelled medic, he just went straight away. He never, I mean, I watched him go through tracers. I mean, I watched him go right through the kill zone, to get to a wounded guy. We were on the Cambodian border doing 7-day rifts at that time, where you're out for 7 days and you do day rifts and then you do ambush patrols every night. So you're exhausted. I mean, you're working all the time. And I was short, and being short means I didn't have much longer to be in country. I was almost ready to go home. And one of the things the Wolfhounds had always, their policy had always been that if you could last 9 months, they would find a job for you offline back in Kuchi for your last 3 months. And so everybody that started to get to that 9 month period always had that in their mind. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get out of this insanity. And yet, because of the unit I was in, we were always short of personnel. We were always short of, our platoon never was at full strength. Uh, we were always in firefights to where guys were getting wounded and new reply. I mean, and so if you were there 9 months, you were an experienced old guy, and they relied on us to take those new guys under our wing and teach them the ropes. Okay, so you don't send your most experienced guys back to Kuchi, right? If you don't have to. And so my 9 month came and gone, my 10th month came and gone, and now in my mind, I'm going, you know what? I've gone, I'm not going to make it. And then I became parent. I got to back up really quickly because this is an important point. When I got to Vietnam and I stepped foot in Vietnam, I was scared shitless. That lasted for about 3 months. My first 3 months in Vietnam, I was scared to death because I didn't know what I was doing, and I'd never had bullets go past my head before. The next 3 months, if you survived the first 3 months, now you got some experience under your belt, and you actually become a pretty good soldier. But in that next period of time, you see a lot of your buddies killed and wounded, and something starts happening in your mind. Now you start hating. You get anger, and you really start hating the enemy for what they've done. So all you want to do is kill the enemy, and you want to do it a lot. And so that's up to 6 months. Then in the next 3 months, which then you're a dangerous person because now you're willing to take risks, you're willing to go outside the box just to get the kills. Because now you're self-confident. You feel like, hey, if I've made it this far, I'm going to do okay. I'm going to make it. But then in the last 3 months of your tour, you go full circle and all of a sudden you become scared to death again.
mm,
Scared that you're not going to make it. In other words, you've gone way past. Most guys don't make it 3 months. So here you are at 9 months and now I'm at 10 months.
mm.
And I'm just getting paranoid. And we're out there and I would tell my guys in my squad, I was a squad leader at the time, I'd say, the one thing you cannot do is go to sleep on guard. Because if you do, and they walk up on us, and this had happened before, earlier in my tour of duty, we had a point guy for an NVA walk right into our ambush site because the guy was asleep.
Mm.
And luckily, we didn't all get killed, right? And so this is always a thing in your mind. You can't go to sleep on guard. And I pounded this into these guys' heads all the time. And of course, I threatened them. I said, if you go to sleep on guard, I'm going to cut your throat. And I meant it, at that point.
Mm.
And so we were up on the border, and we had set up an ambush patrol, and we were really close to the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You could see the headlights of the trucks going back and forth at night. And we were right on a trail, and we had set up, and I put my claymore out. I walked out across this trail, set my claymore up, and I had my guys all set up and everything. And we had the radio because we were on a corner of the ambush patrol. So we had the radio, and we would take turns every hour. You'd pass the watch to the next guy and the radio, and then he'd be on for an hour, and you just do that through the night. And one of the things the radio guy had to do is every half hour, you had to key the mic and say sit rep, negative sit rep. In other words, if nothing's going on, they want to know nothing's going on.
All right.
If they don't hear from you, they're going, why aren't we hearing from them? And this radio was tied into the company back in the support base and the lieutenant on with us. So, it's important that that communication be there. So everything was going okay, and by that time I couldn't sleep. I was so wound up. I could close my eyes, but I'd see stick figures running around. I think I was having little mini nightmares going on and whatnot. And so somewhere in the middle of that night, I started having this dream or this nightmare that there was a NVA that had walked up and was standing right behind me. As I'm laying on the ground, he was standing over me. And of course, in my mind, I had to stay perfectly still. I couldn't move. And then I heard this weird sound. It was, and I'm going, and my M16's right there, and I go, do I grab it and try to shoot the guy, or he'll kill me? I know he will. So then I hear this sound again, and then I must have become conscious because I heard it again, and it was coming from the radio that this new kid had, and he had the handset laying, on his chest, and he was sound asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And something snapped in my mind. Totally, the spring just snapped. And I jumped and I dove and I grabbed him by the throat and I started choking him to death. And I was out of my mind. I can only tell you I was not operating in the right realm. And so I had this guy almost completely choked off, and Mike the Kid Lozon grabbed me and was trying to pull me off, and he was whispering because, it's in the middle of an ambush patrol. He's going, Sarge, you're going to kill him. Sarge, get off of him. And I, all of a sudden I snapped out of it and I got off, and this new kid was sitting there. I heard his throat. He couldn't talk right. I heard his larynx. That's how bad I choked him. So he was scared out of his wits. He was choked off. I heard his throat, and then I had to be with those guys the rest of that night through the ambush patrol, right? So the next morning, our Kit Carson scout Pete, and now I'm really not in a good place, and neither's my squad. I mean, you can see them looking at me, and they were talking behind my back, whispering, and basically what they were saying is the Sarge has lost it. He lost it. And they were right. Now, Pete, my Kit Carson scout, always was with me because I'd been there so long. Pete and I were really close. And so Pete gets up and he steps right behind me on the trail. He was going to go take a leak, and he trips a booby trap about 10 feet from where I was laying. And when that happened, that was it. I had just walked there and put my claymore out. And so I was done. I said, this is it. I know now, I know for sure I'm dead. And so the guys, my squad, must have went to the platoon sergeant, Sergeant Marquez. Now you got to remember, I had been there for almost 11 months in the field. And they went to him, and that's when he came and said, Sergeant Quintrell, you've done a good job. And now it's time for you to get out of here. And he put me on the next helicopter that came in with mail and supplies. And so when he said that, it didn't click. I heard him say I was getting out of there, but it didn't make sense. Why would I be getting out of here, right? And so again, when a couple of minutes later he came over and he said, "Get your stuff together." He said, "We got an inbound chopper coming in about 5 minutes." And then it hit me that I was actually gonna get out of the field. And my guys, my squad, had kind of gathered around, and I stepped out and got on the helicopter. And as the helicopter was taking off, I was sitting there in the door with my feet on the struts, and I was looking at them, and they were kind of in a semicircle. And Kid Lozon was brushing his teeth, and all of a sudden, all of them saluted me. And I felt so guilty. The guilt that I felt for leaving those guys behind was absolutely incredible. And yet, I might actually make it.